The woman at the admissions desk did not look up when he approached. She was typing. She finished what she was typing, pressed a key with the finality of someone completing a task, and then looked up at Marcus Webb with the expression of someone who has processed several hundred people today and has developed, through sheer repetition, a way of not fully registering any of them. "Insurance card and photo ID," she said. Marcus placed his ID on the counter. Then he said, as clearly and calmly as he could given that his hands had not stopped shaking since the school called, "My son is 9 years old. He fell from a climbing frame at recess and his teacher believes he may have broken his arm. I do not currently have insurance. I would like to know how to proceed." The woman looked at his ID, then at her screen, then at him. "Without insurance, we would need a deposit of $400 before we can process the admission for a non-emergency pediatric case," she said. "Payment plans are available. The financial counselor is available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Marcus looked at her. His son, Jalen, was in the school nurse's office 7 blocks away, 9 years old, crying in a way that the teacher who had called described as very quiet and very steady, which Marcus knew meant Jalen was trying hard not to cry in front of anyone, which meant he was in significant pain. "It is a Friday," Marcus said. "Yes," the woman said. "Today is a Friday," Marcus said. "The financial counselor is not here today. My son may have a broken bone. $400 is not something I have right now." The woman looked at her screen. She had the specific expression of someone who is not being cruel, who is, in fact, following the procedure she has been trained to follow, but whose adherence to that procedure is producing an outcome that would, in a different world, be unacceptable. "I can give you the number for our financial assistance program," she said. "If you qualify, they can, sometimes—" "Ma'am," Marcus said, "my son is 9 years old and he is sitting in a school nurse's office trying not to cry. I need to get him seen." A pause. "I understand," she said, "but without a deposit or insurance I am not able to—" "Thomas." The voice came from behind Marcus, quiet, certain and carrying the specific weight of someone who is accustomed to being heard without raising their volume. Marcus turned. A man was standing a few feet back, in scrubs, a stethoscope around his neck, a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other. He was looking at Marcus with an expression that Marcus could not immediately read. Not pity, not surprise, something more specific than either. "Thomas Webb," the man said, "from Riverside Regional. You played defensive end. You broke my nose in the 4th quarter of the semifinal, 2003. Marcus stared at him. "I am Dr. Elias Grant," the man said. "Pediatric orthopedics. I am on until 8. He looked at the admissions clerk. "I will be treating this patient. Please process him through as my personal referral." He looked back at Marcus. "Tell me about your son." Marcus Webb was 34 years old and had been, for the past 2 years, a single father. This was not how he had planned his life. He had planned his life carefully, in the specific way of people who have grown up without the luxury of assuming that things will simply work out, who have understood from an early age that careful planning is not paranoia but survival. He had grown up in Aurora, Colorado, the younger of 2 sons of a woman named Gloria Webb, who worked 2 jobs for most of Marcus's childhood, and who had the specific quality of a person who loves their children with everything they have and knows that love alone is not enough and provides everything else they can besides. He had been, by every metric his high school could apply, an exceptional student and an exceptional athlete, the kind of student-athlete who attracts attention from multiple directions simultaneously and who has to learn early how to navigate the expectations of people who want different things from him. He had chosen academics, not instead of athletics, alongside, always alongside, because the athletic scholarship was the mechanism by which the academics became possible. He had played 4 years of college football on an academic scholarship that his performance on the field had helped him keep, and he had graduated with a degree in civil engineering and a nose that had been broken twice and a very clear sense of what he wanted to do with the next 30 years. He had become a civil engineer. He had worked for a firm in Denver for 7 years, done good work, been promoted twice, built the specific kind of professional life that looks from the outside like evidence that the system works. Then the firm had been acquired. The acquisition had produced a restructuring. The restructuring had produced, in its third round, Marcus's position being eliminated. Not for performance reasons, not because his work was inadequate, but because the acquiring firm had its own civil engineering team and did not need two. He had been unemployed for 8 months. He had spent 6 of those 8 months applying for positions, and 2 of them accepting that the market had contracted in ways that his field experience, while strong, did not immediately overcome. He had burned through his savings with the specific efficiency of someone who has a mortgage and a child and no supplemental income. He had found contract work 3 months ago. Project management consulting, adjacent to his field. Not the same as his field, paying less. He had been rebuilding. Slowly, carefully. The way you rebuild when there is a child watching you rebuild, and you need to make sure he sees that it is possible. He did not have $400. He did not have insurance. He had a 9-year-old son who had fallen from a climbing frame and was sitting in a school nurse's office trying not to cry. Dr. Elias Grant had also grown up in Aurora, Colorado. He had grown up 3 miles from where Marcus Webb had grown up, in a neighborhood that was adjacent to Marcus's in geography and distant from it in several other significant ways. His parents had been professionals, his father a pharmacist, his mother an accountant, and the specific texture of his childhood had been the texture of a black family that had arrived at middle-class stability through the sustained effort of 2 generations and that maintained that stability with the continuous awareness that it was not guaranteed. He had played football for 3 years in high school. He had been good, not exceptional, not the kind of good that attracts scholarship attention, but genuinely good. Good enough to love the game and to understand it and to carry the specific camaraderie of people who have hit each other hard enough to know each other well. He had met Marcus Webb for the first time when Marcus's school had played his school in the 2003 regional semifinal. Marcus had been that year the best defensive end in the conference. Dr. Grant, who had been, in 2003, Elias Grant, Jr., backup running back, 4'10" and growing, had watched Marcus play from the sideline and had thought, that person is something extraordinary. Marcus had broken Elias's nose in the 4th quarter, not intentionally, not anything like intentionally, in a collision that was simply the inevitable product of 2 players going full speed toward the same point in space. Elias had stayed in the game for 4 more plays before the trainer had pulled him. He had not, at the time, felt particularly grateful for the experience. He had felt, in the 20 years since, a great deal more nuanced about it. He had gone to college on an academic scholarship. He had gone to medical school. He had done his residency in pediatrics and his fellowship in pediatric orthopedics, and he had arrived, at 35, at a position on the staff of Denver Children's Hospital that was exactly the position he had worked toward for 15 years. He had not thought about Marcus Webb specifically in many years. He had thought about that game, the way you think about the formative experiences of adolescence, occasionally and without particular weight. He had thought about the broken nose with the specific fond exasperation that adult men sometimes develop toward the injuries of their youth. He had not, when he walked through the lobby of the hospital on a Friday afternoon with a tablet and a coffee, expected to see Marcus Webb standing at the admissions desk with shaking hands and the expression of a man who is maintaining composure by pure will. He had recognized him immediately. 20 years, different circumstances, the same face. He had not hesitated. Tell us in the comments where in the world you are listening to this story from. If HeartLine Stories has ever moved you or made you feel something real, please like, subscribe, and share this channel. Every single subscriber tells us to keep bringing stories like this. Now, back to Marcus and Jalen and Dr. Grant. Because what happened in that hospital room over the next 2 hours was not just the setting of a broken bone. Jalen Webb was 9 years old and had his father's eyes and his grandmother Gloria's stubbornness and the specific quality of a child who had, in the past 2 years, watched his father navigate something difficult and had concluded, without being told, that the correct response to difficulty was to be as little additional difficulty as possible. He had therefore been sitting in the school nurse's office for 47 minutes without crying loudly, which the nurse had described to Marcus on the phone as remarkable self-possession for a 9-year-old with what she strongly suspected was a fracture. When Marcus arrived at the school and picked Jalen up, carefully, his arm supported, his face doing the thing Marcus's face had been doing for 2 years, which was performing more calm than it felt, Jalen said, "I'm okay, Dad." "I know you are," Marcus said. "Are we going to the hospital?" "Yes." Jalen was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is it expensive?" Marcus looked at his son, 9 years old, asking about hospital costs. "Do not worry about that," Marcus said. "Dad." "Do not worry about that," Marcus said again, with the specific firmness of a parent who has decided something and is not available for renegotiation. Jalen was quiet for the rest of the drive. Dr. Grant met them in the pediatric orthopedics department with the ease of someone who spends his professional life with injured children and has developed, through long practice, the ability to make a frightening environment feel considerably less frightening. He introduced himself to Jalen first. Not to Marcus, to Jalen. He crouched down to be at Jalen's eye level and said, "My name is Dr. Grant. I'm going to take a picture of your arm so we can see what is going on inside it. Does that sound okay?" Jalen assessed him with the serious attention of a child who has learned to evaluate adults carefully. "Does the picture hurt?" Jalen asked. "Not even a little bit," Dr. Grant said. "Okay," Jalen said. The X-ray confirmed what the school nurse had suspected. A clean fracture of the radius, the kind that in a child Jalen's age was entirely manageable with a cast and straightforward follow-up. Not an emergency, not something that required surgery, something that required, simply, proper care. Dr. Grant explained this to both of them. To Jalen in the language of a 9-year-old, involving an analogy about the arm bone being like a stick that had snapped but could be held back together while it healed, which Jalen found satisfying. To Marcus in the language of a parent, which was more technical but no less kind. He set the arm. He applied the cast. Blue, at Jalen's request, because blue was Jalen's favorite color, and Jalen had decided that since he had to have a cast, he might as well have a good one. When it was done, Jalen looked at his cast with the specific expression of a child revising his opinion of a situation. "It is actually kind of cool," Jalen said. "It is extremely cool," Dr. Grant agreed. Marcus found Dr. Grant in the corridor afterward, while a nurse was explaining the aftercare instructions to Jalen in a tone that made the whole thing sound like a very manageable adventure. "Dr. Grant," Marcus said. Elias turned. "I need to ask you about the billing," Marcus said. "I want to understand what I owe and what the options are. I am not in a position to—" "I know," Elias said. Marcus looked at him. "I heard the conversation at admissions," Elias said. "I understand the situation. I am going to submit this as a pro bono case. The hospital has a fund for that. It covers the imaging, the procedure, the follow-up visits. Your son's care will be complete." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I cannot accept—" "Yes," Elias said quietly. "You can, and you should, because your son needs follow-up visits and he needs them without you spending the entire appointment calculating cost instead of listening to what I am telling you." Marcus looked at the corridor, at the pediatric ward, at the colored handprints on the walls that children had made, bright and small and permanent. "Why?" he said. Elias looked at him. "Because you are a father, and your son broke his arm, and you were standing at that desk shaking," he said. "And because 20 years ago you broke my nose and I am still here, which is proof that broken things heal if they are given proper care." A pause. "That is not a medical opinion," Elias added. "That is a personal one." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you," he said. Simply, without the elaborate gratitude that the situation might have called for. Just the 2 words, said with the full weight of someone who means them completely. "There is one more thing," Elias said. He reached into the pocket of his scrubs and produced a business card. It was not his hospital card. It was a personal card with a different number on it. "My brother-in-law runs a civil engineering consultancy," Elias said. "Infrastructure primarily. He has been looking for a project manager for 4 months and has not found someone he trusts. I have been meaning to refer someone and have not had a person to refer." He held out the card. "Call him on Monday. Tell him I sent you. The conversation will not hurt you." Marcus looked at the card. Then he looked at Elias. "You do not know what kind of engineer I am," he said. "No," Elias said, "but I know what kind of person you are. I watched you play football for 2 hours in 2003. The way a person plays football tells you a great deal about the way they do everything else." Marcus took the card. The conversation with the brother-in-law, a man named David Chen who ran a mid-size infrastructure consultancy with the specific energy of someone who has built something good and is trying to build it better, happened on a Monday morning. It lasted 90 minutes. Marcus was offered a project manager position at the end of it, at a salary that was 20% above what he had been making before the restructuring that had eliminated his previous role. He accepted. He called his mother Gloria that evening. She cried, which she did not do often, and then she said, "That is what your grandmother always told me." She said, "The people you least expect are watching, so be the same person in every room." Marcus thought about a hospital lobby on a Friday afternoon, about shaking hands and a $400 deposit, and a 9-year-old sitting in a nurse's office trying not to cry. He thought about a man in scrubs with a coffee and a tablet and a specific memory of a nose that had been broken in the 4th quarter of a regional semifinal 20 years ago. He thought about the way the same person in every room looked, about what it produced across 20 years and 3 miles of difference and a broken arm on a Friday. Jalen Webb's blue cast came off 6 weeks later. He brought it to the appointment himself, having carried it in a backpack since the morning it was removed. The cast, which Dr. Grant's nurse had cut into 2 halves so Jalen could keep it. He had covered it in marker drawings in the 6 weeks he had worn it. A football field, a spaceship, the word "Dad" in large block letters on the inner curve where his father could not see it while he was wearing it, but where Jalen had put it anyway because it felt like the right place. Dr. Grant signed it at Jalen's request, with the same blue pen he used for everything. Jalen studied the signature with the critical attention of a 9-year-old evaluating a piece of art. "Your handwriting is bad for a doctor," Jalen said. "All doctors have bad handwriting," Dr. Grant said. "It is a professional requirement." Jalen considered this. "Is that true?" "No," Dr. Grant said. "But it is traditional." Jalen laughed. The full, unguarded laugh of a child who is not in pain and is not trying to protect anyone from worry and is simply, completely, in the moment. Marcus, standing in the doorway of the exam room, watched his son laugh. He thought, this is what proper care produces, not just healed bones. This. If this story reached something in you, if it reminded you that the right person at the right moment can change the entire shape of a day, and sometimes much more than a day, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have a story of your own, a moment when someone saw you when the system did not, write to us at heartlinestories@gmail.com. Every heart has a story worth telling. This is HeartLine Stories, where yours matters.